Oh, and Robin,
Yep,
is Enterprise invited?
yep. Hey everyone, and welcome to the On Davos webinar series. My name is Robin, and I'm the community coordinator on the On Davos core team, together with Mark and Dorothea. For those that are new to On Davos is a community-driven conference that runs in Davos alongside the World Economic Forum. And our purpose is to give everyone a stage to democratize, humanize, and also bring action to Davos. With our new Road to Davos webinar series, we are focused on starting to prepare together for Davos, helping you plan, position, and get ready for the most intentional week of the year. And before we introduce today's session and host, we would like to go through some Zoom guidelines. So first of all, we recommend everyone to turn on your cameras so that we can see each other from across the world. Also, we highly recommend you to use the chat if you have any questions or if you would like to connect with others during our session. Feel free to share what you are doing and also invite others for conversation. There's a lot of good people in the room today. Also, during our session, you can use the hands function. If you want to ask a question or share something, then you might be invited to the stage to ask your question or share. And lastly, keep the energy visible by using the reactions during the session. And lastly, this session will be recorded and also streamed to YouTube and podcast if you want to see it or share it later with those that might get value of seeing it later. And then today we are joined by our very own Mark Terrell, which is the founder of On Davos and an 18-year Davos veteran. He will guide us through how World Economic Forum Week really works and give you the clarity you need to navigate one of the most intense leadership environments in the world. And with that, I want to welcome you, Mark, to stage. The stage is yours. Sorry about that. I actually think we lost Mark. So we'll give him a minute just to reappear, and then he'll be here in a split second. There we go. Mark, welcome. Welcome back.
Mute myself as
Now we can hear you. Sorry about the technical challenges. Thank you all for your patience. This is the world we're living in with technical issues sometimes, but that's how it is. Hope you're all doing well out there. Checking in from across the world. Feel free to share where you're checking in from in the chats. Always fun to see where
Robin,
people
I think I'm back again.
You are back again. The stage is yours.
Yes. Very good. Thank you. And let's hopefully manage us to continue. Yeah, we find the fabulous go to screen, which disappeared. Let's get it down. We have to do that, that. Yeah, I'm going to help somebody who needs to go. Beginner's guide, share. Yes. And it's working? Yes.
Yep.
Robin, is it working? Okay,
It is
very good.
working.
Excellent. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. As the questions come in, we'll take the questions as the end as we go to make sure that I don't get distracted. I will talk a little bit fast. I will apologize only for that. Just like I only apologize once for interrupting, but that's because I get excited. But also in here, the session is being recorded. We will have a transcript that we'll make available as well. And that does mean that if you have colleagues that you think should benefit from hearing this, they can still hear it. In addition, since we're really AI experts, it means then that if I am talking fast, and that's harder for non-English people specifically to hear, at least we can go back to the transcript. And I don't know, Robin, if the Fireflies, if that's even giving a live transcript. Is it giving us a live transcript too?
It is, and I can share the link if people want to use that.
So we're basically like, we started off with sort of Davos Summit in 23 as being the first AI-powered event in Davos. So properly using it, not just talking about it or pretending to be using it. But so right now we have a lot of tools that we use it. So welcome. And today we're going to be giving you the beginner's guide to Davos. Now, I do see that some people have been to Davos beforehand. Super cool. It's always good to get a refresh. But so why are you listening to me? So my name is Mark Tyrone. I'm known as the Wizard of Davos. I can basically fix anything. There is a King of Davos, a Mayor of Davos. There are the Votes of Davos. So these are Davos insider jokes. For me, I went to Davos for the first time in 2008 as a World Economic Forum technology pioneer. I've been in the Congress Center, I'm also one of the creators of the Side Event World. So I'm uniquely placed to be able to share to you now, let's say, sort of, what is Davos? How does it work? Particularly for those people that are new to the game. Let's kick off with what is Davos? Now, by the way, when I go around the world and I speak to people, quite often my first thing as I say is, do you know the World Economic Forum? There are people that don't know. You really have to be in business, economy, investors, but there are people that don't know. So if people don't know the World Economic Forum, I say, well, it's a gathering of around 3,000 CEOs and presidents of countries and companies that gather together every year in Switzerland at a place called Davos. Sometimes they go, Davos, if they are, depending on which country, they define it all in different ways. But so quite usually I give the hook of saying, well, there is a World Economic Forum. I then follow up quickly by saying, well, the World Economic Forum has around 3,000 guests, and that's for their annual meeting. However, the town of Davos itself is much bigger than that. It's actually 20,000 people. Then Davos is basically a time and place. Generally, it's Monday to Friday. and this year it's going to be Monday the 19th to Friday the 23rd. Many people arrive on the weekend before, particularly those that are traveling from far away or from warm countries and will need to acclimatize. And then most people leave on Friday or Saturday. So it's a very intense 4 or 5 days. It's anchored by the World Economic Forum meeting. However, only about 20% of people are there specifically for the World Economic Forum, but it is definitely anchored. We know that it's anchored because in COVID times, there were times when the WEF had said they would move to Singapore, and people that were planning to do events in Davos decided to do the events in Singapore. So to some extent, Davos right now is sort of tied to this ever enlarging sort of side event community around it, similar to Cannes Lions, which has a similar dynamic, similar to COP30, which just took place right now. So it's a center of gravity. And were the WEF, unlikely though it's likely, so very unlikely, were to leave Davos, the side community would, in all likelihood, follow instantly as well. To give you an idea of how intense it is, there are 1,500 events taking place in Davos during that week. What is an event? It could be a 5-person panel for an hour. It could be, one of my favorites was Caspian Week used to have about 10 people on panel. That was really good. And one of my most bizarre times in Davos was looking at one of the Indian states, have 3 people on the panel, 3 people in the audience, and 2 journalists filming it. And for the pleasure, they spent almost $750,000 Swiss francs for this thing. It's just a bit weird. Now, of the 1,500, the WEF itself holds 300 of the events in their Congress Center, which are therefore not accessible to the public, although many of them are live streamed if you want. But just to sort of frame it up, it is kind of about money. So WEF companies are spending at least $250,000 a year to be an annual member. They increased the prices a few years back. $850,000 can give you a sort of strategic partner. To have a promenade venue, to take over a shop that normally sells cheese or baby furniture, will cost between $1 million and $4 million francs. A typical scale-up might spend 100,000, and even just a bedroom can easily be 10 or 15,000. I'm giving this to you to really frame up Davos as being an extremely intentional sort of time and place where people bring their A game. They bring their A game from across all areas of society. Well, not all areas of society, until many areas of society, because they're still having to be able to get there. And even though there are better conferences on every topic in the world, this is the only place in the world where the best of the best move. It's really a fascinating place. Let's talk about the role of the World Economic Forum themselves. So to some extent, they set the agenda. Now, they've done some more in previous years. This year, their current agenda, or like sort of strapline, is a spirit of dialogue. So they're not really. So by the way, our Davos Summit is going to have the spirit of action. Well, I'm sort of getting ahead of myself. But before, they've said it's complex worlds, intelligent ages. So the air, and it sets to some extent conversational. And 80% of Davos is outside of, and many of the rooms that are, they're not sort of trying. However, a lot of the major corporates, particularly the US ones, are there. They're there in strength, and often they're contributing to the West sort of planning, thinking around the agenda. So quite often, what is coming up on the Congress Center actually reflects the conversations that need to be happening around the world. I do understand that with Trump coming in, there's been a request for less wokeness within the Congress Center. That doesn't necessarily mean that outside of Davos will be much more woke by definition. But this is just sort of getting a feel and a sense for what's happening in the world. The World Economic Forum does have an event called the Open Forum that is run by the World Economic Forum. However, I would call it merely interesting. It's not wealth. So it's the sort of not quite made for, it's made for the local population to feel as though they're somehow engaged. But generally speaking, you wouldn't tell people you've gone to the WEF and gone to the Open Forum different element. But fundamentally, the WEF has given us an excuse to gather, but we're not gathering for the WEF. Let's just talk about what is Davos, because many of you here, some people are here for our LinkedIn community, which is growing all the time. Some people are here because of the Davos community. Some people are here for other communities that we're also part of. So when it started, it was a community of World Economic Forum members and the extended Davos community. I started it. My first I was a WEF member as a tech pioneer and then a young global leader. And in 2011, I realized that there was a whole community of basically Swiss bankers and lawyers who would be attending at the same time as the World Economic Forum. However, they wouldn't be in the World Economic Forum, they'd be in the side events. So when I found out the secret, I then shared a document called Handy Tips for Doing Davos. That document has been used so far by about, 20,000 people. When the term Undavos came up, it was a guy called Yobi Benjamin who created it in 2013, was thinking about unconferencing Davos. So for those of you who've looked at whatever kibbutzes and the DLD folk looked at how do you unconference things, to say, well, okay, a conference is when you organize in this room between one and two, this person speaking. And it's very much, you have to sort of command and control it. However, when you unconference something, you're saying, like, here's some space, here's some time, who wants to put their hand up to run something? And so it was this unconferencing spirit that came in. At the same time, back in the day, it was also underground Davos. Because even though we were WEF members, we kind of kept it a little bit quiet. And these were information shared with, let's say, fellow Illuminati. Well, how much does it change? Well, back in 2012, there were maybe 20 people. 2013, already there were maybe about 200 or 300. Today, right now, there's just about 3,000 directly in the Telegram group, and another 3,000 who indirectly take the benefits because they allow somebody from their firm to come in and they still get advantage of the information. And Davos has three missions: democratizing Davos, humanizing Davos, and bringing action to Davos. What does that mean? Well, democratize doesn't mean to say everybody should come, because it's not how democracies work, but we want more voices to be heard. An example about how we put this in place is that we've worked out the panels, 4 or 5 people being heard is good. But in the same way, then we have a little bit of a mission. So right now in Davos Summit, we don't male-only panels. We basically stop male-only panels happening because that wouldn't represent the different voices of the world. Humanizing Davos looks at how do we have more relationships rather than transactions. So humanizing also in terms of Davos means sharing an apartment, which many people haven't done since they were a student, and maybe some people have never done it. And bringing action to Davos is the thing that we're getting focused on more and more. I think the World Economic Forum does an exceptionally good job at making a business model out of talk. Companies spend a large amount of money to be seen to be saying the right thing, but that also saves them from doing anything necessarily. Not for all companies, not all times. What we're really looking at is more and more intentionally as we put together the Davos Summit is having real action being embedded into the program, not just giving people a voice. So I'll talk about if the WEF is a context and Davos Summit is a context. So the Davos Summit, thanks to many of the people in the room, has become the largest independent event during the World Economic Forum in Davos. To give you an idea, what does this mean? This means 3 years ago, it was one room in the Pisha in the Mountain Plaza Hotel. Officially, it had a capacity of 20 people, but we shoved 30 people in, and we used that room for a week. So 3 years ago, 30-person room. In 2025, we had 3,000 unique delegates. We had about 70 sessions and over 300 speakers. This year coming up, again, we have about 80 sessions on the wall. We have around 10 different programs. We'll have tickets this year. One of the things that we have, as many of the other Davos venues have, is we have a problem of room size. What does that mean? So we have a small room for 40 people, a bigger room for 70 people, and then for the TEDx that we're bringing into Davos, we have a room for about 140. Most Davos rooms, even for Wipro or for these big companies, maybe seats 50 people. Well, the way that we organize our program is that people RSVP to attend. We have, I think, a minimum number of 4 times oversubscribed. Well, normally we have, let's say, Health at Davos was 10x oversubscribed. This is a fantastic problem to have, unless you have to handle it with people. we're now using more and more work to curate the audience coming in to make sure that the audience is also just as intentional as the people on stage. And that means, though, but what we're also looking at is that for some of our audience who wants to contribute to the summit and get a ticket, program ticket, I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later, or access pass, that means that we will have reserved seating for people to come. And somehow always think about, if it's free, you are the product. So please remember that. So right now, we don't have a big IBM or a Cisco that is giving us large amounts of checks. Our chosen way of funding this goes to the community we started, which means that we have small contributions to costs. We don't have pay to speak. I put my own events than it is to be part of something more contributions. If anybody's interested in that, please let me show you some. Another thing, Davos, and we'll get into sort of let's say the how-to things, are something called Davos delegations.
Mark,
yes.
just a quick intervention. Your connection is a little bit bad, so maybe unshare your video, and so we adjust your screen.
Okay, very good. I will do that. Oops. Here. Take a video. And get back to share on screen.
And if you could repeat the part about the tickets, you broke off just then.
Okay, if I swap that. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we also hear you better.
Okay. So if I just mention for those people for the Davos Summit, and I mention the access pass again?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to have now to help, so we will have free access to the Davos Summit. However, in practice, there'll be very few free places. What we will have, though, is that we've got really thought through what do people really want when they go to a conference or a summit. And one of the things you really fundamentally want is you want to make connections. We go to a panel on a topic because we want to make connections. What we've done is we have a thing called the program ticket. So if you want to be part of the Rewire AI program or the Finance and FinTech program, you will get access to the delegate list. That means, all of the people that are properly signed up to come will also share their LinkedIn as well. So you can do your networking before Davos and after Davos as well. So you don't just have the problem that you go into a room in a panel and you speak to the person to your left, to your right, and you know the audience, but you're able to network with everybody, even if you didn't get to meet them. We then have a thing called an access pass, so program tickets will be around, I think, 400 or 500. It's just about to be announced. We will have some discounts now for our friends of Davos, so that's coming out very soon. An access pass gives, let's say, privileged access to all of the summit events where there's space available. And you also get then access to the entire delegate list for the whole conference as well. Now, people will still be able to freely go into the conference as long as there's space. The other thing then is have certain things which are community sessions. So Ignite talks will be one. We have an on-conference. Last year, we did give people the option to donate money to support the conference, but I'm sad to reflect that nobody wanted to donate any money. So now, though, if you would like to make use of time and space, even though it is massively below cost, we are asking for a contribution of at least having an access pass. But again, if this is something you want to do, please speak to us. It's very important to get the voices out there. But at the end of the day, somebody has to pay. So we just have to work that out. If I move to Davos delegations, maybe the easiest just to say is that not for everybody. So if you've done Davos a lot of times, sometimes if you're in a sort of particular group, you don't need that much help doing Davos. But a lot of people, they arrive there, they're standing in the snow or the street, and they don't know what to go do. Now, sessions like this will help. But what we've done is we packaged together things that people normally want to have, and we're calling them Davos delegates. So I won't go into it in too much detail, but it packages together your. So already there is an intake form. You tell us who it is that you'd like to go meet. Not necessarily a person, but generally, I want to meet real estate investors that invest in Asia. And we will work out how to make that connected, not just within our delegations or even the summit, but our wider network as well. And it's trying to give people more of a web-like experience for the side event world. But before I go into the basics, let's just talk about why bother going to Davos? So the thing is that, because after all, it's expensive, it takes out a lot of time. The thing is that you have an extremely high quality audience across all kinds of sectors and across all kinds of geographies. This covers investors, it has scientists, you have government ministers, prime ministers, and it's an extremely intentional presence because everybody wants to or really needs to do real business, either because of the cost or because their role within an organization. Everybody's putting masses of intent in. It's a space to initiate and then deepen relationships. And what does this mean? And I spoke to one Greek businessman in shipping, and he had sponsored Greek House 3 years ago and put about 300,000 in to cover, let's say, a portion of the Greek House costs. He was then met the Saudis at one of the receptions at Greek House and then was invited to a Saudi reception. 2 months later, he did a $200 million deal for ports and shipping. That is classic Davos. So right now then, to have high-level conversations, you're not talking about selling hamburgers and making transactions. It's around initiating relationships, developing relationships. And also, January is something new. I was, let's say, when Davos happened once at the in May, I was thinking, well, maybe actually May is quite good. But fundamentally, third week of January sets up your entire year. It's fantastic. And it doesn't matter whether you're fundraising, doing partnerships, finding clients, gaining awareness, launching. But you do need to be, let's say, basically Davos worthy, and you do need to be basically Davos ready. So if you don't have the budget, then don't go. If you aren't really prepared, don't go. So there are a number of reasons why you shouldn't go, but there are many reasons why you shouldn't. And oops, I guess it was me. So but then if you are going to go, be serious. So a Davos tourist is somebody who goes around and says, oh, what brings you to Davos? Oh, I'm just looking around. So there are a lot of serious people here. And if you're not going to be serious, you can go. But right now, don't expect people to treat you as a serious person. So this is a place for everybody. You need to bring your A game. You need to have, with you, so you need to have enough sleep. You need to not be too hungover by Thursday. My case that I always had was that I used to lose my voice on Thursday for sure, and sometimes even Wednesday, because I was singing at the piano bar, but also they used to have smoking in Davos. So for me, that was obviously not a good way to do it. But right now, being serious means you're part of the conversation. You are speaking. If your company can afford it, you are sponsoring. You are asking questions. You're initiating contacts. You're joining people together. You're part of the conversation. You're not just tourists or hunting selfies. Now, yes, you can get a selfie with Sam Altman, who's actually when he comes, he's quite a good person to get a selfie with. But sure, and that might impress the people at home. But if you're going to be Davos worthy, it's okay, but you can do better. Oops. But now I've given you a lot of context. Let's get into the basics. Because fundamentally, when I worked out about doing Davos, I realized that what was needed was two things. You need something to do, and you need a place to stay. That's the fundamental of all of this stuff. Something to do and a place to stay. So let's have a look. Well, already if you're going to go, one of the first things that will pop up is how much money are you going to spend? So my advice to people is to look at your Davos budget as an overall amount of money that you would put in. Just like I'm in Paris at a conference right now, and my budget for going to Paris for a week is around 1,500. Because I need a place to stay, I need a flight, I need to go out for a couple of dinners. Maybe it's 800, maybe it's 900, but I've got a budget. Now, at the same time, then I'm not going to be upset that my apartment, my hotel costs 500. Davos, though, is a bit weird because Davos, a studio apartment can cost you 10,000 to 20,000 for a week. This will be the most amount of money you paid for a mediocre, it's a terrible piece of accommodation. And yet at the same time, you might be totally joyous because you get an extra 2 or 3 hours of sleep per day. And you're actually very happy then. But let's just think about budget. So typically, more and more people I see, particularly those based in Switzerland or in Europe, will do a Davos day trip. That means that they will stay or fly in or stay in Zurich or somewhere around there. They'll take the train in, takes around 2.5 hours. They're still able to go in. Generally, it quite often doesn't make sense to get a hotel bag because you might spend 2 hours queuing for it first thing. Less hard later on in the week. And maybe you've sponsored a thing, spoken of a thing. So there's the day trip thing is actually quite a viable option. Now, some people might want to contribute more when they're doing a session, but maybe their day trip still costs them 5,000. There are people who stay in like go backwards, forwards the whole week. They stay in places like Skoll. We talk about where to stay, and they spend an hour and a half in the train every single day. There are people that stay in Zurich the whole week and they spend 2.5 hours in the train there and back, but it's still worth it. But day trips then become an option. Outside of that, and then you have the individual or startup kind of pricing. It means you kind of end up with between 5,000 and 10,000 francs. Now, generally, I found Davos pricing is easiest done in Swiss francs because, hey, this currency has been practically stable for the last 30 years. So right now, 100 francs is, I think, equivalent to 94 francs as was, which isn't the same for the dollar and the other currencies. But so generally, people in Davos tend to price francs because that's what costs work out at. But so generally, an individual or a startup spending their time in Davos for the week, they're going to be spending between 5 and 10, maybe 15 if they have a PR person. As I do more and more of these Davoses, it becomes clear that some people have a PR agency and a camera crew that follow them the rest. So just because I don't do that myself doesn't mean to say that other people don't. Now, typical scale up, I'm just picking a couple of examples. They might be spending 10,000 to 50,000 if they bring 2 or 3 people, they sponsor an event. But then when you look on the corporate side, then you're looking at going to the WEF, which costs the corporates typically, they won't get change out of 400K. And they could easily be spending 5 million. But it is worthwhile saying that corporate that's spending the money with the WEF and spending their 400K, in terms of airtime on stage, when people say, how do you get seen to talk at Davos, let's get realistic. A CEO from a WEF partner will get to be speaking at a panel, probably not 2, and they will get literally 6 minutes of airtime on a panel of 45 minutes. So it sounds like a lot, but somehow it must be worth it. Let me talk about where to stay. And this is something that I'm going to do a separate video on quite soon. Over here, there's Davos. And here right now, this is what you would pay on booking.com. So here, there's a place where the daily price is 26,000 euros. Daily price here, daily price here. So, what is it? Actually, maybe that's not daily, that might be weekly. Some of these prices don't even sound too crazy. But right now, you have literally thousands of millionaires and billionaires coming into a small place. You have some of the richest companies in the world coming in, bringing 40, 50 people. You have companies like Citigroup doing board of director meetings for 20 people. There's a lot of people cramming into a tiny space. How small is Davos? Well, there are literally 2,500 hotel rooms for the whole place. And the World Economic Forum by themselves has 2,700 delegates. It's a tiny place. There are now about 1,000 apartments for rent in Davos, but because of, let's say, corporate Me Too type of things, many of the corporates taking apartments that before would have housed 6 people, now might only house 2. What's happening, though, is that people are now moving further afield outside of Davos into the other places. And on the other side, there's a whole area south of Davos, which goes to Filsor, Glarus, Filsor, Lenzerheide, down here, Davos Wiesen. Now, these type of places can be 20 minutes, 30 minutes drive. The roads tend to be clear, and there's much, much less traffic south of Davos. So right now, it's a very sensible idea to start looking for places. Now, I live in Berlin. Berlin is a gigantic big city. It takes me 45 minutes to 60 minutes to get into the middle of Berlin, and I'm still in Berlin, and I live in a nice part of Berlin. So I do think that sometimes we Davos people have got a little bit too sort of ahead of ourselves with, let's say, what we're willing to put up with. But I think as Davos does expand, more and more people are looking to stay further out. Now, it does mean that things that were super cheap 2 years ago now are just becoming sort of moderately cheap, because gradually people can see the prices. And if you look at north, so this is Soda is south of Davos. You don't want to stay in Arosa, because even though booking.com tells you it's 11 kilometers away, you'd have to be a bird. You are not a bird, and you can't fly a helicopter because you'll get shot down with a Stinger missile. So Arosa, even if booking.com says it's the closest place, is around 2 hours and 45 minutes driving. Yeah. But so anywhere up to Landquart is good. This is about an hour by train. Bad Ragans is quite nice for the VIP stuff. Then you have Liechtenstein as an option. And then people will stay as far as Zurich and take the train and commute. And then there's a place called Skoll over here. And that's also where more people are coming in. And they just take the hit that it takes them an hour to an hour and 15 minutes coming in. You just have to make sure you get the last train. I think the last train's going north have been 10 p.m. Somebody, I think, was telling me that maybe they will move to 11 o'clock at night. So, but then otherwise you're looking at car sharing, community stuff. With that, let's talk about getting around. So the best airports to fly into is Zurich. You could fly into Geneva because it's in Switzerland, but it's about 5 hours away. Don't fly to Geneva unless you have meetings there. But so Zurich Airport is about a 2.5 hour train. You have 2 stops. Switzerland isn't like the United Kingdom. If the train says that it'll leave at 15:06, it leaves at 15:06. It doesn't leave at 15:20 or 30, and it never gets cancelled. So right now, then, Zurich Airport is typically where people get in at the international. Once you're in Davos, so parking is limited. There is parking. Davos Platz Station has a core where there's a parking lot. However, this year it's expected to be much harder to get in. There'll be more questions asked when people drive in, partially because Trump is coming. There's a much more heightened sense of security and awareness. Inside of Davos, pretty much the town of Davos is 3 kilometers as a line, and the Congress Center splits it up at 1.5 kilometers. And most events take place in Davos Platz between Belvedere Hotel and Davos Platz. And so the Davos Summit, for example, is the end of Davos Platz. It's about a 20-minute walk backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. Most people end up walking between 10 and 15 kilometers per day. Now, you can take a car if you have one, but expect that it can easily take you 30 minutes to go 10 minutes because of the traffic. But the final thing I will say on this getting around is that Ubers are now everywhere, and now they're actually quite fair and not a ripoff. And when they first came in, it was catastrophic. However, right now, because there are Ubers, it means that there are certain locations where it would be impossible. You'd have to drive, or you would need to get really time your sort of once a day bus. Now, it will still cost you between whatever $40 and whatever $60 to go 5 minutes. Partially, it's Switzerland, so going 2 kilometer ride in Switzerland will cost 20 to 25 sort of francs anyway outside of Davos. But it does make places available. Do be aware that if you did miss your train, and if you're looking at going somewhere that is whatever 45 minutes away, it could easily cost you 500 to 1,000. Also, many of the Ubers come from Italy, and some of them don't have winter tires, and they do crash. It has happened before. I want to make a message about the community of Telegram and WhatsApp, but also give you an example about pretty much why this whole Davos thing exists. So if you're not in the Telegram community, please let us know and we can add you in. We use Telegram rather than WhatsApp as our primary area because it has a group history. If every single person came in to say, hey, I'm you, how does it all work? We would be inundated with newbie requests constantly. And we have 3,000 people coming in. Telegram has the group history. We have some thematic groups. We have beds and rides groups. We have different things. But then also outside of what Davos does, there are many other WhatsApp groups with maybe 200, 300, 400 people, but are also helping to connect people together. But if I do a little detour, let's talk about why we're even doing this in the first place. So back in 2008, I was one of the few people going out, and there was almost nowhere to go out to. Piano bar was something where the Illuminati knew that it was there, but it only really happened on Thursday night and Friday night. So one night, I think on Wednesday night, I was still out at 1 a.m. and I was drinking at the X Bar, the only place that was open. And there were 3 taxi cabs in the whole of Davos in those days working at night. There were 4 people standing in the queue. The first 3 got in and they spent 120 francs to go to courses where most people were staying. I was the 4th person. I had to wait literally an hour for the 3 taxi cabs to come back to be able to go. In the old days, it was kind of selfish. None of us spoke to each other. It was environmentally unfriendly. It was basically kind of shit. Now, though, what happens is that in 2025, somebody would go into the Telegram group to say, hey, does anybody want to go south and go to Filsor? And someone would say, well, I'm driving to Lenzerheide. I've got 3 spaces in my car. Do you want to join? So it's environmentally friendly, it's all cheaper, and you get to have great conversations. This is a huge reason why the community is changing this. Let's then talk about how to get return on investment. So there's a logic that I've been applying, which is that in order for you to go back, you always need to see about 3 times return on investment. So in other words, you risk adjust the money that you put in. So if you spend 10,000, you need to see 30,000 in somewhere. This is important because everybody here is rational, and we're not talking about spending whatever $10. Even just stopping to get a sandwich in the train station on the way could easily cost you $25 or $30, which is quite a lot for most people outside of Switzerland. So it is worthwhile thinking about what is the return on investment. Logically speaking, all of these people going to Davos would only go back if it was worth it. How much worth it? 3x worth it. 3x what? Well, 3x whatever you spend. But then the question is, how do you get the value? So this next section we're going to go into, now that we've gone through the basics, we've discussed, let's say, the cool things about how and why, let's talk about how you actually get the value. Fundamentally, people are connecting around content in the most effective way. So there are social gatherings, and I love social gatherings. There are some incredible events for social gatherings. But the hope of a social gathering is that you eat a sandwich next to the right person in a sea where everybody could be anything. Now, in Davos, you will still have possibly the best sandwich you've ever had and the best sandwich conversation you've ever had. That's normal in Davos. It's normal in Davos to have a week that is totally miserable and you don't meet anybody at your own event. And just as you've given up, you share a tray with the perfect person who's actually your biggest client and nobody had ever. So I spoke to one of the crypto brokering firms, and this one guy who had had a miserable time, the last person that he met was their biggest customer, and nobody had ever physically met this person. Davos is just weird. And that even if it looks like it doesn't work, you at any one moment could meet the perfect person. The thing though is that if you're looking for getting a better hit rate, the better hit rate comes around content. So right now, I'm in Paris. I'm at the Adopt AI Summit. And over there, somewhere is a health section. So if I want to do health and AI, I need to sit over there. I could sit at Gare du Nord and hope to meet people passing by, or I could go to a bar and a cocktail lounge and hope to people. But if I go over there to the content session, it's basically guaranteed. So right now, we really look at, and that's one of our pieces of change, is that people connect around content. How the hell do you find out the content? So one thing we have is Davos Week. And if I just make a little distinction between Davos Week with the space and Davos Week without the space. So we then call this sort of web experience and all the side events Over the years, this has become known as Davos Week. So Davos Week basically covers everything that takes place 19th to 23rd of January. Davos Week without a space is the official side events directory and map for Davos. You can use the QR code here. It's been historically free to join, and we've had some sponsors. This year, we're going to have some premium features to help cover some of the costs. But the important thing is that last year we had over 1,000 side events listed. Already, the app is live today and has, I think, 64 events in there so far. Ultimately, I have well over 1,000 side events. But we do curate these things. That means that we check things for malicious links and bad actors. This is not the case with many of the spreadsheets you will have going around. One year, one of the better known events had malicious links on their website, and their websites were literally hoovering up people's data. If that's what you'd like, click away, totally fine with that. Up to you, cybersecurity is your own thing. From our perspective, looking after the community, we check through malicious links to make sure they're not there, if they weren't. And we also know that there are some people that are bad actors. It's historically known in Davos that some people run, let's say, harvesting events where the event will never take place, but they're looking to collect people's details. I, being in this for 18 years, know that this stuff is happening. This is not a good thing. I can't stop it. But what I can do is make sure that those people in our community are protected from it as much as possible. That's why we have Davos Week. And that's why it's official. The next thing then is a concept. So when you look at all of these events, so the way you use Davos Week is you'd say, well, my topic is conservation. I'm looking at conservation, nature capital. You type in and do a search and you find the various events. What's interesting about Davos, though, is that every single event is like its own little bubble. So what does that mean? Let's say that Davos Summit has a nature capital event on Wednesday morning. It's a 1.5 hour session, conservation, oceans. People that are really interested in that go there. However, you might have another event on a similar topic that takes place at the Schatzalp on Tuesday. And then a completely different room in the Davos Summit afterwards is on quantum technologies. In fact, what happens is that every single event and every single venue has its own bubble. A bubble might have 50 people, a bubble might have 200 people. So the game of Davos, though, is typically how do you pop as many bubbles as possible? Now, a group that I would consider to do Davos, let's say, well, badly, is the Web3 bubble. Because the Web3 bubble love the Web3 bubble. They stay inside the Web3 bubble. They don't pop any other bubbles. And so Web3 bubble tends to meet the people they meet in Singapore, Dubai, and London anyway. They just meet them in Davos. Probably not the best use of time and money. My advice for them is that they need to go out of their bubble to go and visit different types of topics. So TradFi instead of DeFi, gives them different people to go see. But there's a game of Davos bubble popping. Now, all of this, remember, is around how do you increase your ROI? And it goes on, you want to meet around connections. You want to make those connections. Now, we have a framework then about looking at how you do Davos. I published a LinkedIn post. And if anybody follows me on LinkedIn, I can I'll put it in my LinkedIn in case people aren't connected with me yet. But so there are 3 phases now to doing Davos: preparation, presence, and follow-up. Now, particularly if you're new to this, but this is sort of a good way of doing networking. Preparation is everything goes up to Davos starting. Presence is you're physically there, but also mentally there. And follow-up is what happens next. If you miss out on any one of these 3, you will do significantly worse. But because Davos is weird, you could just do everything wrong, but one single person makes your entire year. But what I'm talking about here is how do we optimize you and how do you really get most out of what you're up to? So at the moment, we're all in the preparation phase. You need a place to stay. What, where, budget, etc., etc., etc. Then you need an anchor event. So you need, let's say, if people say, what brings you here? Well, what do you say? So ideally, you'd say, I'm speaking at a panel on this. I'm sponsoring a half-day conference on blah, blah, blah. So therefore, what is your anchor? The next is you need to work out, well, what is your access? What is it that you're actually sort of waiting to get? I mentioned Davos delegations earlier. There's the thing about, do you need a hotel badge? Now, maybe if I just do a little detour for the hotel badge explanation, it's a misnomer. It is actually a police security clearance guide to take you into the security zone places where the world leaders and very senior people are. In order to get the security clearance, the only way of getting that, okay, 99.9% only way of getting that is that you need to be invited by an organizer at a security zone hotel into their event. And what happens is that the organizer would pay 50 to 100 or 200,000 to a hotel, one of the security zone hotels, and that gives them the rights to have guests. Some of those guests will be World Economic Forum people who don't need to have badges, but the others need to have security clearance. Otherwise, they literally can't get into the event. And so these people have the rights to make hotel badges. Some programs give them away for free. That's been historically done over time, but the majority of them not. So therefore, they'll have a pricing model, and then hotel badge capacities go out. You can't do an event for 50 people on Monday and do 500 badges, nor can you do a 50-person event on Monday and give out a badge on Tuesday. But then you're thinking about, how do you have access? But if you need it, you need to get it, and you really should organize it now. Another thing people do to prepare is alert your network. Send out LinkedIn messages. I have friends, family office friends who call up their private bankers and say, hey, I'm going to be in Davos. Is there anything I should be invited to? You can pre-arrange meetings, or at least try. But then what you need to do is you need to prepare your Davos pitch. We'll get into that. And you need to prepare your post-Davos follow-up in advance. It is a stupid idea, one that I've made many, many years, of preparing your follow-up after Davos finishes. It's a terrible idea to prepare your Davos follow-ups the week before Davos even starts. The best way to do this thing is already plan what happens next now, because there's a certain point when everything crashes together. And if you delay even by 2 weeks, you might as well just forget about it, save the money, go on holiday somewhere else. Let's talk about being in Davos. The key thing is presence. You need to actually be there. People are there with intent, but if you go there and you're on board meetings for your public company, as I was in my first year, or you're doing Zoom calls with your technical team, you are wasting your time. It is a terrible idea. You don't have to believe me, I will still be right. So cancel all of your non-Davos meetings, cancel your regular meetings. Just, you need to be there. The next one is you need to decide your focus balance. What does that mean? Let's say you're trying to finish off your fund and you're looking for LPs for your investment fund. If that was really your focus, and that's all you do, all you talk about, that's 100%. If you were in between jobs, you're just floating around seeing what happens, that's 0%. So there's a balance that takes place for your focus. Generally speaking, if you're hyper-focused, set your focus to not more than 80%, so you're 20% open to random stuff. Also, if you're completely unfocused, maybe at least you should have something to focus on a little bit more, even if it's helping somebody else. But decide on that, because what you need to be, and Davos is really special for this, it's the magic mountain. Serendipity is guaranteed to happen. Getting the right random connections, we just don't know who, and we don't know how many. The next thing, and I will share this, is my ABC pitch perfect method. I'm still trying to work out the name for this thing, but there is an optimized way of doing Davos networking. And then the other thing is that we want to make connections very quickly. QR code exchange, LinkedIn exchange, etc. Now, so we've got about 8 minutes left for the session, and we're just sort of moving towards the end. The ABC pitch perfect method is, hello. Ideally, you're the first person to speak, but you say, what brings you to Davos? Well, the other person says, well, I'm this person, I work for this company. Maybe I'm speaking on a panel about A, and I'm looking for B and C. Fantastic. So now we've got ABC. At this point, you're listening to them and you're thinking, C, I just spoke to a lady over there. She does C. I'd love to connect them together. You're helping somebody else making some connections. At the same time, then, for me, I'm at Z Corp and I do E, F, and G. And at this point, you might have it, oh my God, if you do G, we need to talk. Let's arrange a follow up. Or it's okay, very fun. Neither of us have got any interest in talking to each other. Let's connect, but you're never going to message the other person. And good luck with that. Now, this isn't as bad as the old Davos creepy method where people would look at your name badge, stare at you in an intense way by looking behind your shoulder. This type of networking is very, very optimized to finding the right people in a room immediately. This works extremely well. So we'll definitely get prepared for that. And then we'll get to sort of moving towards the end. Then let's look at the follow-up. So my follow-ups this year will probably sort of 300 or 400% better than before. The key thing is to set up something like a Calendly, a Cal.com, or a Google Calendar for people to book time. It's a huge waste of time to say, let's arrange a time together. It's much easier to say, hey, if you want to speak to me, pick a time in my diary. If they want to speak to you, they will always pick the first time available, and then they know that they like you a lot and would like to have a chat. If, on the other hand, they don't reply, it means that probably they don't like you that much because it's not that urgent. But so booking to the calendar is a game changer. The next thing is using LinkedIn to do your follow-ups. People like LinkedIn, it's professional. Ideally, though, when you do share your LinkedIn, you give some context and say, hey, I met you at the Monaco event. That's helpful. Then what people do is you package up your content, your pictures, your audio, some of your reflections, typically used by AI to give you like a little bit of boost, and then you post it on your socials. That then helps people know that you're part of the conversation. And then the final recommendation is to quite often focus on closing the 2 or 3 things that can actually close, because that's where you would actually yield your return on investment and have things come out. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening. We will make this deck available and you can get my contact for WhatsApp. Happy to share that, and my LinkedIn as well, which I've shared. I will share my WhatsApp piece as well into here as well. There we go. And with that, I will stop the share and put my video back on and happy to take questions. And thank you, everybody. So already I can see that, yes, the recording will be made available. We have the recording available of the audio, of the video, and the transcript too.
We have a question for the Telegram link to join the community.
Very good. And I will share this.
Also, a question earlier up from Justine is where to get the police security badge.
So looking at how do you get one versus where do you get one. So if you've already been told you have a security badge, you need to pick it up at the police pop-up thing, which is at Davos Platz Station in the old post office, and it's just opposite the co-op. That's where you pick it up if you have one. If you don't have one yet, you need to find an organizer who's able to help you. Now, on Davos is having an event, is propping up with an event, but there are other people as well. There's the Global Conversations, and they have an extremely good package as well to help you get an event too, to get a hotel badge. But those are a few places to go do it. Hotel badges are greatly in demand this year, and there is a much more limited capacity because the Hilton has been a hotel badge thing ever since it was first created. This year, the World Economic Forum has taken over the Hilton Hotel entirely. And that means then that you only have events to go to in the Belvedere and the Alpengold. There aren't that many events in the Alpengold, so it's primarily the Belvedere Hotel. It means, though, that there are fewer events writing hotel badges, but also that there are fewer events to go to. Now, it's pretty much a balance. I think for many people, it works best if you're in the area of investing in investments. It's good. If you tie up to WEF and WEF partner companies, it's good. If you're really kind of a newbie to Davos, I would put it into the bucket of, is it worth spending $1,000 to be a tourist? And sometimes the answer is yes, depends on how much money you have.
There's a follow-up question. What is likely the cheapest you think one could secure the badge for this year?
It depends on when and how. So at the moment, pretty much you're looking at what I've seen is around $850, $900. there were some events that went out for 350 in September. And the woman who ran that event was using her early badges to help fund some of the deposits she had to pay. But there was a limited, I think, 10 badges that you could get. But right now, the events in these hotels are really, really expensive, and sponsors aren't giving the giant checks. So now we're seeing more and more people trying to recover money in the hotels from hotel badges. Normally last year, I think at around this time of the year, it goes up to around 1,000. And then at the end of December, it goes around to around 1,200. And then in the last week of Davos, quite often you can get a badge. It might drop to 500, but then processing from the police can take ages, and then you don't even get to use the badge anyway. Oh, well, never mind.
There's a question about clothing. What to wear, what not to wear during those week.
So the temperature goes down to minus 15 degrees. That's very, very cold. So, however, what's interesting then is that thanks to whatever, maybe some of the policies and procedures that many of the corporates have and the investors have, it gets really quite sunny in Davos and quite warm. And it can, generally, you've been able to go around. I mean, I've got whatever, these type of shoes. I've worn these shoes, my sort of Prada sneakers, for a couple of years in Davos right now. And that looks totally fine. I will generally have take a pair of shoes like this. I take snow boots just in case, because if it snows, it really does snow. I've also got crampons, which are the rubbery things that I keep in my jackets to sort of slip on. I have historically taken business shoes in the early days, but in the end, I realized that there were so many people kind of dressed as a bit of a snow chic that it really didn't help me too much. It's different though on the women's side, and I've even did an article in the BBC around, let's say, sort of female dynamics. So there are incredible cocktail receptions. There are great gala dinners. It's quite normal for women to have maybe 2 or 3 pairs of shoes with them during the day in a bag, and so have super nice shoes for the gala reception, walkabout shoes that you're comfortable with, and then maybe snow boots as well. Now, there is an extra dimension. It is nice to stay in Davos. I've stayed in cloisters, I think, 3 times, but now I'd only stay in Davos. And that's because I like to have a change of clothes at night. And sometimes I like a nap. I can do that when I stay in Davos. I can't do that when I stay outside. Other questions? Greg has got a thing about the diversion. So this year, one of the big changes to the hotel badge is that you can no longer walk past the Congress Center. The Hilton has been taken over exclusively by the World Economic Forum, and now the security checkpoint will basically not allow you to walk through on the promenade. Instead, you have to walk on a street called Scaletta Street around the top. It does get icy. It'll add maybe another 10 minutes to your walk. So it's really not as practical as it used to be. It also means you can't do the cool selfie in front of the web. Very sorry about that. Maybe if I take another question on the youth delegates. So certainly don't get a hotel badge for youth. Doesn't make any difference. And so the Hilton is gone. The Hilton is no longer an accessible hotel anyway. So Hilton disappeared. There are no events in the Hilton this year that you can access. In terms of youth delegates, so there have been a number of programs for the youth. There's been the Wisdom Health Youth Accelerator that Marcelo Garcia has done, a great program. Was Alice April? She's done programs for youth. So there are a number of youth programs that are out there. Generally, no problem at all. It's an open town, it's an open city. If you are going to bring in, let's say, any large groups into any event, it's probably quite good to ask the organizers ahead of time to say, is it okay? But that goes into group size. But so normally it's quite an interesting dynamic place for kids to go to. We've had some youth programs at the Davos Summit as well. But if you are bringing people in, it's just a good piece of respect to ask the organizers, is it okay if, rather than just turn it up? Because even if you have I've got places where I have for lunch and it costs about 1,000 a head to have lunch. And so if you say, hey, these are only 5 kids, they're not going to eat very much. Well, okay, who's paying the 2,500 worth of food? Just to check. Okay. Any other questions? Have I missed anything, Robin?
There's a question from Alex. What are your feelings on Davos sponsorships offers that are given out by interested VCs trying to compete for a term sheet?
Um, don't really understand that. I mean, so generally speaking, maybe if I reframe this, so how much does it cost to sponsor an event in Davos? So let me start off with obviously with the World Economic Forum, you're talking about hundreds of thousands. If you're talking about doing your own event at the Belvedere Hotel, you're talking about spending 1 or 200,000. And that's your own event. If you are at some of the really prestige places like AI House, their sponsored ticket prices are typically around 50K. If you want to sponsor the Swedish lunch, private lunch, the ticket price is around 35,000. Going down, you might have like programs like Web3, World Women, something, something, something. You'll end up with ticket prices between 5 and 25,000. Now, remember what I said about ROI. If you think that the sort of, you'd only do these things if you think it's worth it and you can get a return out of it. Now, that means then sometimes I've advised people against sponsoring, let's say, title sponsor for a program like Davos Summit. And that's because they don't have enough people there to actually take advantage of the leads. And so therefore, without this, hang 1 second. So right now, then sometimes you just don't have the capacity to even take advantage of the sponsorship, so you shouldn't do it in the first place. Now, I'm a little bit unusual in that I will tell people on calls where somebody has framed up, oh, you got to sponsor this and this and this, and they get very shocked when I say, no, you don't. Don't do that. Terrible idea. But for me, this is a game played over years. This is not about whatever selling some hamburgers this year or getting a little bit of extra money and buying newer Prada shoes. It's much more about working out what things fit you genuinely. And I think this is how we globally should be doing better businesses. We have relationships, we work out how to really get people placed with the right things, the right time, and everything else. Okay. Maybe then thank you very much. So maybe then if we wrap up, so just some concluding thoughts. I mean, thank you ever so much for so many people coming. And thanks for those people that are listening afterwards. Even thank you to the people that will take this content, stick the road name on it. The people share my stuff, they keep my typos and spelling mistakes in, so that's okay. But I want to say that there's a reason why I've gone 18 times. So Davos has been, some of my best friends ever come from Davos. Finding them, connecting with them over the years. For me, it's really been around developing relationships, not so much transactions. And at the same time, though, transactions and business does come out because so for me, it's good business to go there for sure. At the same time, then it does really have quite a special spirit as to help yourself, but you can help yourself a lot by helping others. And that can be everything from helping somebody by giving where is the toilet and they're confused. It can be somebody who doesn't know how to take Swiss trains and you help them out. It can be that you give somebody a ride in the snow. Doesn't really matter, but karma, Davos is a way where you work out that karma does work. So when you go around, you cool and help others, things will gradually sort of close back and you get out to. So with that, please connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're not on Telegram yet, here's my Telegram. Hopefully, Robin, you can collect all of the chat things and I can go click through and connect with people on LinkedIn. And then we will share the deck as well and the transcripts. So,
cool.
With that, thank you very much, everybody. And see you on the Magic Round. Now, we will do extra webinars on things like expert stuff for event organizers. We'll do some things on AI and Davos. We will going to have extra, more specialized stuff, but this will be our only beginner's guide that we do. because I would just be saying the same thing next time around, in which case you can just see the video. Thanks to all, and enjoy the rest of your day. Ciao.